Revolutionary Love. This is your man, Baba Dr. Brother Samori Kamara, with another video lesson for you in the Warrior Teacher course. Today we're going to be dealing with just a few of the other homeschooling methods that are out there. All right. So, of course, this is about African-centered education and an African-centered methodology in giving our young folks an education for liberation. But of course, we take things from other methods, other traditions, other ideas as we should. Right. So let's get right on into it. Let's start. So one of the first, or one of the most popular homeschooling methods you hear about is the Charlotte Mason method, right? It's centered around the belief that children deserve to be respected and learn best from firsthand real life situations. I don't disagree with that, right? In a Charlotte Mason method, you give your children time to play, create, and be involved in real life situations. You might take a nature walk, visit an art museum, learn geography and history and all that kind of stuff. So it's about those real situations when you're talking about the Charlotte Mason piece, right? It's three parts. Number one, you have the atmosphere. Children absorb a lot from their home environment. Again, as I've always say, right, you are the curriculum, right? The world is our classroom. Our children learn, most and best from everyday interactions. And so the Charlotte Mason method understands that, and understands that they observe a lot from their home environment. So we must create the kind of home environment that is conducive to their learning, their liberating education. So we must have books all around. We must have people who look like them, our cultural elements all around the house as well, so our children can know that being African, in our case, right, being African is normal. Number two, you have discipline. Encourage toward good habits, specifically the habits of character. Again, that's very similar to an African-centered education where the cultivation of a moral human being is paramount. The cultivation of good character is paramount. And as African proverb teaches us, a good name shines in the dark. Right. So we want our children to be those kind of people who our community can trust, and they can trust themselves, and they have integrity. Right. So we see that. Also, we have the next is life. Life should be given living thoughts and ideas, not just dry facts. So in the Charlotte Mason idea, you don't really read many textbooks. You read books from people who are passionate about what they are talking about. Not those little dry so-called objective, textbook types of things and workbooks. No, you read living books by real people, real breathing people who love what they're talking about, right? And when you're doing your living books, you're also learning about other things. So if you're studying history, of course you will read books, those living books. You will listen to the music of the culture that you're learning about as well. You learn about the art. You might cook the food, right? And you would experience language arts through narration, right? So your child, you read a book, you read a living book to your child, and your child, you say, what did you think about the book? What did you learn from the book? And your child narrates that back to you. And that narration is very important for the development of writing, because if our children can articulate their ideas about a particular subject, a particular book and whatnot, they should be able to translate that verbal articulation into their writing. Right? Very, very important. Let's move on to another one. The next one you have is classical education. Now, classical education is very popular in homeschool circles as well. And classical education for me is really the kind of education that Europeans stole from our ancient civilization of Kemet, or what the Greeks would call Egypt. Right? So let's get into it. It's based upon the trivium. The trivium is the core of it. It has three stages: the grammar stage, the logic stage, and the rhetoric stage. So let's get into those. In the grammar stage, it's understood that a child is a sponge, right? And the grammar stage goes from birth until about third grade, right? So you have a fourth grade. So child is a sponge. In this stage, children easily memorize facts. So you fill them with the facts. Fill them with the facts about their culture, the facts about our great warriors, the facts about the mathematics, the timetables, the addition facts, the division facts and the subtraction facts. You fill their minds with facts about the nature and science and phonics and all these kind of things, right? We fill them because that is the foundation. We call that at Kamali Academy, we call that the roots, right? Those are our Sukuni is another word we use for that. That's the root stage where we fill them with with that kind of information. Because a lot of times, many people argue as adults, right, about things and express opinions about things, and they don't have the facts about things, right? It's natural to go through a development like this. So you go from having the facts, and then you go to connecting those facts, which is the logic stage, where it's from about fourth grade, fifth grade to about eighth grade, right? And this moves beyond simply memorizing things, but connecting events and concepts. So, in the early grammar stage, you learn about Malcolm X. You learn where he was born. You learn when he was born. You learn that he was a part of the Nation of Islam, and he died in 1965 in the grammar stage, right? When you move beyond grammar and get into the logic, you ask the question, so let's say you learned that you dropped out of middle school in eighth grade. You begin to ask questions, why? Why did you drop out? So the logic stage is about the why. And again, we must embrace that. We must embrace that curious stage there and allow them to connect different ideas. You ask the question, why did he leave the Nation of Islam? You ask the question, why was he different, and or how was he different from Martin Luther King? Because you also learned that Martin Luther King was a Baptist preacher. Martin Luther King was a doctor at 26 years old. You learn those facts, but when you get into the logic stage, you begin to ask those why questions and connect different things, right? And the last stage is the rhetoric stage, and this is from ninth grade to about 12th grade. This is like the high school stage, where you begin to bring those facts together and those logical connections in order to express an opinion in a persuasive or logical manner. Now, in a lot of classical education, debate is very, very important, and debate is very important for our children. I mean, we want our children to be leaders, right? And so learning to debate, from both sides of an issue is a great skill for them to have, right? And in the rhetoric piece, now you begin to say, look, okay, this is how I feel about this because I know the facts, I've connected these things, so here is how I feel about it. You begin to produce things of your own, produce writing. You might even want to write some books. You might even want to, do some audio. You might want to, create videos to connect and present your side of the story when it comes to different ideas, right? And so again, I bring it back to adults. Many of us don't have the grammar stage down. Many of us don't have the facts about a situation, but we're ready to give our opinion. Many of us don't even know the connecting concepts and ideas about a situation, but we're ready to give our opinion, right? So we want to make sure that our children have that foundation of the facts, and then have them understand those facts deeper or more deeply by asking the questions of why and how and when and where and all that kind of stuff in the logic stage. And then they move on to create their own knowledge in the rhetoric stage. And we use this a great deal with Kamali Academy. It is kind of foundational to what we do. It is very reading intensive in classical education for the most part for most people who use it. But of course, if we're going to be reading things, we're going to be reading our classic books. We're going to be listening to our classic music. We're going to be studying our classic language. And so classical education deals a great deal in Latin, right? Children who are doing classical education, they learn Latin. That's the classical education for Europeans, not for us. I believe that our classical language should be the Betu Neter or the hieroglyphics. I think our children should begin to learn that language. And a great book is by one of my favorite authors, Ai Kwe Arma, who wrote 2000 Seasons and The Healers and many other books. But he also wrote a book called Hieroglyphics for Babies. And so Google that, hieroglyphics for babies. Let's see if we can find it. And our children need to begin to learn our classic language. I don't care if they're already a senior in high school. They still should learn our classical language, which is the Metu Neter, or divine speech. Okay. Some of the criticisms that people have of classical education is that, the rigorous style of teaching may kind of, lessen the love of learning, because you got, look, we doing this, we doing that, we going through it, right? So there's a lot of reading, a lot of things going on. So that love of learning might wane sometimes when you're dealing with the classical education. Number two, there's a lot of reading involved, like I said, and the purchase of books can get expensive. Can get expensive, right? But of course, you have the library, and you also have Kindle books and ebooks like that can help with that. All right. So that's the classical education. I like a lot about the classical education. Now we have home unschooling. Unschooling. Many of you have probably heard of this idea of unschooling. The picture says, "Run wild, my child." So it refers to the natural learning, child-led learning, organic or discovery learning. So the unschooling idea is that, look, children are naturally curious, and they will learn on their own. And when they want to learn something, they'll come to their parent, or they'll find the right kind of resources for them to learn it. If they want to learn algebra, they're gonna find a way to learn algebra, because we learn naturally. If they want to learn, how to read, they'll come to me and tell me they're ready to learn how to read, and I'll help them learn how to read. Right? That is the unschooling idea in a nutshell. Right? It contends again that children are naturally curious and interested in learning. Right? The children create an education instead of being given an education. And I like that idea. I mean, if you talk about interest-led learning, child-led learning, we like that. At Kamali Academy, we definitely, try to tap into what our child's interests, our students' interests are, what their purpose is, and kind of gear many of our activities around those things. So look, you like cooking? Okay, let's do something with that. You love animals? Okay, cool. Let's do something with that, right? So there is definitely child-led and interest-based learning within Kamali Academy as well. Here's a quote from someone, I'm not sure who it's from. It says, "You cannot teach a person anything. You can only help them find it within themselves." Very good quote. Very good quote. Because, listen, African wisdom teaches us that if you want to know how fast a child can go, send them where they want to go. All right. If you want to know how fast a child can go, send them where they want to go. And so that is the child led learning piece there. That is the organic or the discovery. If they want to do something, then they're going to learn a great deal. But when you begin to try to send them where they don't want to go, try to teach them something that they don't want to learn, you're going to have to pull them. You're going to see how slow they can be. They'll be dragging. Right? The unschooling piece, I like many things about it, but of course, I don't think our ancestors would have left these kind of things to chance, right? Because I don't care if you want to learn what it means to be an African warrior. You're going to learn it. I don't care if you want to learn what it means to be a good mother or a good father, a good person for your community. You're going to learn it. I don't care if you want to, learn how to be, a moral person, an upstanding person in your community. You're going to learn it. I don't care if you don't want to learn math at this moment. You're going to learn it. You need it. Right? So there's some things that I don't think our ancestors would have, they definitely wouldn't have been down with. And I don't know if we should be down with that as well, right? Because we are our children's parents for a reason. We are elders for a reason, and we've been alive, a little bit longer than they have, and so they need us to navigate sometimes for them. Not all the time, but in certain situations, absolutely. And in their education, sometimes we definitely know better than they do. Right? And some people who are all for unschooling will say, "Nah, I don't agree with that." And I'll say, that is fine. You know what I'm saying? But from an African-centered perspective, we can't leave the education for liberation of our children in their own hands. Right? They may never decide to learn the kind of things they need to know to be the kind of people we need them to be to get us out of the situation that we're in as an African people. Right? So some of the criticisms of this philosophy is that many children lack the foresight to learn the things that they need to know, in their adult lives. Another thing is that there may be gaps in a child's education unless the teacher or the parent makes sure that the material is covered. Some children are not motivated to learn anything and will spend all their time in uneducational endeavors, if not coerced to do something else, right? So I know many of us, we think in home unschooling, our children will probably play the video game all day. And you can learn some things from the video game, and we can tie some things in, no doubt about it. But that's what they'll probably do. You know what I'm saying? Probably wouldn't even eat that much. Probably wouldn't even bath. But they'll be on that video game, right? Another thing is that children who direct their own education may not develop the ability to really work with other folks and take constructive direction from other folks, right? Won't be able to do it. So let's move on. Unit studies. Unit studies. I love unit studies, right? The unit study is you take a topic and you tie it into many areas, subject areas such as math, reading, spelling, science, art, and our story, right? And so if we're learning about African drums, we're gonna, and I'm just throwing this out there, we learn about African drums, we're going to read stories. You're gonna maybe read a book about African drums, right? We're gonna play African drums. You don't want to have this book knowledge, right? We're gonna play African drums. We may talk about some particular drums, let's say from Ghana. So when we talk about those particular drums, maybe we'll eat some of the food that comes from Ghana. Maybe we'll listen to some of the music that comes from Ghana. Maybe we'll deal with how they create their drums. So that's dealing with the trees and maybe even some physical science in there as well. So you just tie everything in. We tie everything in to that one particular subject. And even in math, you can talk about the circumference of the drum. You know what I'm saying? And the volume of drums and whatnot. Now, with unit studies, I would say that things like grammar, phonics, language, and mathematics, those kind of things can be and should be incorporated into the unit studies, but they also need their own class, if you will, as well. They need to be taught separately as well, because you really can't talk about area and circumference of a drum if you don't even know how to add and subtract. You know what I'm saying? So we definitely need to have some ongoing sequential learning in grammar and math as well as doing the unit studies as well, right? If your child is interested in horses here, you can research the breeds, you can write stories, you can draw horses, etc. Right? And sometimes they can be packaged, and sometimes you can create your own. And in this class, and maybe in a couple weeks, I'm going to put out a video and give you some resources to teach you how to create your own unit studies. It's a beautiful thing. We are creating some at the moment, and we'll have some for sale later on this summer. But I also want to teach you, as a warrior parent, as a warrior teacher, how to do it yourself, because of course we won't be able to cover everything your child loves, right? So if your child loves basketball and we don't have a unit study on basketball, you can do it yourself. You can deal. Math is all through basketball. Talking about decimals and percentages and games played and all that kind of stuff. Even with sports science, it's all through basketball. You can read stories or read books by their favorite basketball players or about their favorite basketball player. So it is. You can look at the history of a particular team or the history of the league, right? So it's a lot of things that you can do. There's some criticisms of this particular philosophy. Sometimes parents can be overzealous and make a unit study out of everything, right? Scaring a child off from talking about a new interest, because the parent like, oh, you like Beatles? So we're going to create a whole unit study on Beatles. We're going to learn everything you can possibly ever learn about Beatles, right? Or sometimes, again, like I said, math and grammar and phonics might suffer if we just try to teach through unit studies or teach math through unit studies only. It should also have their separate class as well. All right, good so far. Hopefully we're getting a better understanding of some of these philosophies. I know I'm moving fast. Let's move on to the next one. All right, and so of course the next one is traditional. School at home. And many of us do that. Many of us just take our children out of the public school system only to put them in a desk at home and try to teach them the same way they were already attempting to teach them in the public school system, right? This is a more traditional, more structured kind of approach to the thing, where you have, look, at 9:30 we're gonna do math from 9:30 to 10:30. Then we're going to do science from 10:30 to 11:30. Then we're going to do whatever, right? And you're using a lot of textbooks, a lot of workbooks, and not much interaction. Much like the public food system, right? But on the other hand, it's minimum preparation on your part, because a lot of times you can just, buy a curriculum, in a box, and say, okay, today we got our schedule. Do this page, do these pages in the workbook, do these pages in the other workbook, do these pages in this textbook, and boom, I'm gonna check it, and then we done, right? But I say, of course, why would you want to create, the public food system within your home, right? But I understand that many of us, even though we are mad with the system, we are children of that system and don't know anything else. And so this is one of the beautiful things about Kamali Academy and what we do with our blog and the videos and stuff that we put out there, but also with this course, is that we'll give you some other options, some other understandings of what you can do in your homeschooling environment that can make that education much different, and it should be much different from the education our children was getting in the public food system, right? Also, this method has a high burnout rate. I mean, it's a lot. I mean, those curriculums can be expensive, and children can get tired of, doing the same kind of stuff they were doing in the public food system, right? And of course, and it can be, very expensive. All right, so let's move on. Then we have one that I think many parents actually do across the country, and that is an eclectic homeschool, right? Eclectic homeschool. You see our little picture? Look at this. Oh, we look so cute. Look at all of them. Anyway, and this, we mix things up. So we might use some workbooks, and in fact, I've created a couple workbooks for our students in grammar and reading comprehension, right? The reading comprehension book is 50 Africans You Must Know, and the grammar book is Kamali Academy's a grammar book, right? And you can find that on KamaliAcademy.com. So we use the workbooks. We use Khan Academy a lot for math, and also, our students do our mental math class. We do, and of course we do reading. We do spelling. We engage in unit studies, and we do unschooling for some of the subjects. It's like, look, let's just do it. What do you want to learn about? And many of our children, when you ask them what they want to learn about, they have no idea, because many of them who have been in the school system for a while, they've never been asked. All they know is it going to be on the test, right? And if you say, look, we ain't taking no tests, they lost, right? So we got to detox them, from that mindset as well. So, but the eclectic piece is definitely the one that we use. We got some classical in there. Of course, we got some Charlotte Mason. We got some Montessori. We got some unschooling. We got all of that within. We got some, all those things, bringing it together to make up a beautiful soil, so that our seeds, our young warrior scholars, can grow to be the best that they can be, right? So, in concluding, find which one resonates with you. Of course, all of those things can have African-centered context, African-centered content, and African-centered perspective within it, right? So you don't have to worry about that. But of course, as an African-centered homeschooling person, of course, I'm saying, whatever it is, make sure they have an African base. So if you're going to use classical, make sure the kind of facts and figures they learn, during the grammar stage, there's a lot of facts and figures about who they are, about their family. One of the things that we want our children to memorize is their family tree, to understand where they come from, who they come from, so that they can understand better where they can go in the future, and so they can understand, who they owe homage to, right? Yeah, all of them can use African-centered content, and again, find out which one would be good for you and yours in your homeschool environment. And I think I'm out on this one. So we say revolutionary love, and we'll see you next time.